Bloomberg reported that Russia's war-related industry is booming. What's happening right now, considering military-industrial complex in Russia?
We have to keep in mind the general picture, not just military-industrial complex. Many people, when they talk about, which is booming, obviously, naturally, there are huge expansion of the military-industrial complex. People have to keep in mind that military-industrial complex, modern military-industrial complexes, they are always dual technology industries. And once you launch military-industrial complex, the way it operates in Russia, it immediately pulls up, so to speak, other industries. But again, it wouldn't have been possible without overall industrial health of Russian economy, which, of course, a government agency, Rosstat, which, by the way, many American and Western economists use data from, it shows an incredible growth in what is called adjacent industries. For example, you build more tanks and more something. But you also, if you look attentively, and this was happening actually for a while now, you have the huge increase in the production of, let's say, diesel engines. I mean, rolling stock, basically, from rail cars to locomotives to everything. You have the expansion in the commercial aerospace industry, and it goes across the board, including, of course, what Russia is now the major, well, actually number one, I think, exporter of grain. Russian agriculture is booming. So it's across the board. It's not just military-industrial complex.
Putin at the Valdai Discussion Club talked about Sarmat and these new generation of nuclear weapons. When Russia started designing or producing these type of weapons?
Well, no, these are old technologies, old in relative terms, of course. Obviously, when you have research and development of such system as Sarmat or hypersonic weapons, it takes decades to develop them. And it was actually, even in the Soviet Union, there were already basically, how to put it politely, preliminary works conducted on the preparation for the development of the hypersonic weapons, for example, and of course the intercontinental ballistic missiles with such energy capacity as Sarmat, which of course has pretty much, can fly around the world. Let alone if we talk about something like Burevestnik, which is of course known as Petrel or Skyfall. So it has all roots in the Soviet times. It was in Gorbachev times when actually this was essentially either ground to a halt or annihilated altogether a number of the programs. But of course, once the Soviet Union collapsed, just to illustrate to you, there was a program called Holod, the cold, which had a very serious NASA involvement in Russia, where they demonstrated the feasibility of the controlled hypersonic flight based on their old S-200 air defense complex booster missile. So, and they achieved already then something like 40-second, hypersonic flight. It was early 90s. NASA collected this data too, together with the Russians. But after that, Russians moved on. But in the United States, they pretty much, killed the program. They didn't take it seriously. Well, guess what? Now you can see the results. Russia has the plethora of the basically hypersonic weapons, while the United States doesn't have any. So there you go.
Is there any relations considering NASA and Russians right now?
Yeah, there are. I mean, first, NASA already confirmed a few days ago, I believe. I didn't read their news in detail, but I know that NASA wants to continue to cooperate with Roscosmos in terms of their, catching the ride to the International Space Station at Soyuz spaceships. And there are still fairly significant contacts there. I mean, unlike the official Washington, D.C., NASA definitely is much more pragmatic in this respect. So, and do not forget, a couple of Russian cosmonauts have been already delivered to the International Space Station, or whatever the name of the SpaceX project, Musk's rocket or capsule. So it's pretty fruitful, I would say, for now.
how this conflict between Israel and Palestine gonna influence the war in Ukraine?
Well, it's already influencing it in terms of switching the focus of public opinion, basically, in the West, away from the catastrophe which is happening as we speak, for especially around Avdiivka operational axis. That, well, again, keep in mind, I do not want to be very cynical, but because I work a lot with numbers, and when you look at operations, you operate with numbers only. Of course, you do. You can consider the issues. For example, if we talk about the units or formations, you talk about the morale, fighting spirit, and things of this nature. But you operate with numbers. You look at numbers. You have to understand that just in the October alone, by latest data by Russian Defense Ministry, Ukraine, armed forces of Ukraine, lost something around 7,000 already killed alone. So, and when you look at this, you again, as I state, you look at the special military operation, which stretches 1,000 kilometers front, with the hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of troops involved. So, in militarily, if we consider obviously the fact that Israel treated Palestine as, inhumanely, to put it mildly, not that I am in any way obviously exonerate those Palestinian, Hamas primarily terrorists who basically, wholesale took hostage of Israeli civilians and killed them basically indiscriminately. So, but one evil doesn't cancel, one wrong doesn't makes the other wrong right. So, but the point is, it was kind of coming in many respects, this thing, and especially when we begin to consider the rather shocking news from the Egypt, whose intel chef spoke openly about it, and it was in the Times of Israel, this article, that basically Egypt, 10 days prior to this attack, warned Israel. That takes a completely different, under different perspective. So militarily, it is Israel gonna suppress it if they'll decide. Albeit I don't expect them actively involved on the ground within the Gaza Strip. But of course, the issue is that for Netanyahu, especially considering the development on the Ukrainian front and knowing what is happening in the United States politically, it was a chance actually to both maybe finish off the Gaza Strip and in the same time get involved United States into the war with Iran, theoretically. This is how they think. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen. And again, by the reaction of Hezbollah, for example, which wanted to stay away from this whole thing, it's also very indicative. So we have a really big game here, which of course, in the end, doesn't help Palestinian cause one way or another. And as I already stated, we will see now the wholesale war crimes committed by the Israeli forces against the Palestinian population, including the so-called, indiscriminate, well, some of them probably will reach the target, but we have to keep in mind also that Hamas is pretty shrewd itself, hiding behind, in their civilian buildings, having those tunnels and things like that. So it's a bad situation. And again, I am on the record on both sides. There are no good people. But politically and geopolitically, because of being the basically hotspot for decades, and which goes back to 1948, I believe it was the United Nations declaration and recognition of the state of Israel. So it comes down to this animosity between Arabs and Jews, basically, and that has a much more complex, so to speak, structure, so to speak, this conflict, than merely the fact that Netanyahu, boys, basically they violated their one of the major mosques for Muslims, and that's where it all started. The reaction from that, which of course haven't been reported properly in the Western media, but. when you look at this, and especially the way things unfolded, there are questions, and I don't have the answer. But obviously, the global public opinion now is concentrated on that, despite the fact that in terms of the scale of, pardon me, slaughter in Ukraine, Ukraine dwarfs what is going on now in Palestine. But Palestine is a focus of the world's public opinion, and it will be attached to it for a while, I think.
Zelensky just came out and talked about this conflict in Israel, and he said that Russia is behind this attack of Hamas on Israel.
Well, because it has no choice. Again, just as we speak now, there's a major Russian advances on the crucial Avdiivka operational axis. And again, we look at the slaughter of the armed forces of Ukraine. It's just unbelievable. So what he has, his regime is basically now holding by the thread. So he has to also now consider this fact that suddenly the United States, which is the main sponsor of the Kiev regime, suddenly public opinion, public attention obviously switched to Israel-Palestine issue. So what are you going to do? And plus we have the situation which now Biden wants to, allegedly by some British, tabloid express to ask for $100 billion, one check, blank check for 2024 for Ukraine. So you have to understand that he's desperate in this respect. And what's left for him to say? I'm wondering why he didn't say that actually aliens also got involved on Russian side, to, fight Ukrainians. It's all desperation. It's all actually comical to a certain degree. And of course, he will say that.
How Russia feels about this conflict in Israel? What's their policy in that region, in your opinion?
Oh, Russia is very unequivocally behind the Palestinian statehood. Mr. Putin today just stated, you want to stop it? Give Palestinians statehood. It's one of their. I'm not a specialist in the region, and obviously I understand a very complex issue. It's not just political or geopolitical or land or what have you. There is a huge religious element involved in there between Muslims and Jews. But Russia obviously supporting the Palestine statehood. It is also Russia position in this respect also is very, how to put it, very clear in terms of acceptance of the existence of the state of Israel. Russia by no means denies state of Israel its statehood, and it's just a matter in what framework it's gonna exist. And of course, there is no even doubt about it that Russia, and not only Russia, anybody who has half brain, accuses United States of being absolutely partial in managing this conflict, because the United States is the main managing force in this conflict, not least through a very powerful Jewish lobby, Israel lobby in the United States, which effectively, Israel lobby essentially runs the foreign policy of the United States. So there you go. And Russia in this particular case is extremely, on the target. And it's not only Russia. Many people who, as I already stated, have IQ above room temperature, they know that basically the United States is actively involved on the side of the state of Israel. And because of that, there is no honest brokerage and between Palestine and Israel, because Israel is constantly supported by the United States. So this will continue for a while again. I guess Netanyahu wants to finish off Gaza. And we have to keep in mind that a very well-known fact that Hamas essentially is a creation of the Mossad to kind of offset the Palestinian Liberation Organization. So there's a lot of, so to speak, dirt on both sides in there. And what can I say? It's tragedy, of course. It is tragedy for Palestinians, especially in Gaza, which have been abused for decades now, treated inhumanely. And now they, just, what can I say? We have this, it all came to a head tragically for both sides. But Israel eventually will be able to handle this militarily, because Hamas, of course, is a no contest. And what can I say? It just doesn't matter how they decide to proceed with that.
China's policy in Israel is so similar to that one of Russia. They're trying to keep everything calm, and they're trying to advocate for negotiations, for peace agreements. What would be the next step for the Biden administration in that region?
In this particular respect, all American foreign policy establishment and White House are essentially in the pockets of the IPAC, American Israeli Political Action Committee. It's Israel lobby, powerful, extremely powerful, which effectively occupies most of the key positions in the Biden administration. Is in State Department, and if you look attentively from the Anthony Blinken to Victoria Nuland, these are all Jews with obviously very strong attachment to Israel. So in this particular case, I think the United States will support Israel unequivocally, whatever they do, as they usually do, essentially. So even if Israel decides to go for the genocidal solution, which is horrible in itself, and they're already turning off water, lights, everything. They basically commit war crime already as we speak on the wholesale scale. Not that it's in any way exonerates Hamas or what they did to Israeli civilians, but United States will support it. So they send now this carrier battle group there, to demonstrate the support. Not that it will do much. Israel has its own resources to deal with that. But again, as I stated, for Netanyahu and his cabinet, and Netanyahu is not, he is a very specific personality, so to speak. He definitely has some signs of psychopathy. Well, he's psychopath pretty much, as most of people and political leaders are there. He pursues two objectives, I think, as I already stated, to completely settle the issue with Gaza by means of taking full control of it and basically annihilating it as any kind of the semi-political entity. And secondly, his eyes are on Iran. He's a paranoid in terms of Iran, as many are in Likud party. And Iran is the only country which can beat Israel, essentially. So, and Israel has no resources, own resources, to do anything about Iran. And in this particular case, the whole idea is to drag the United States directly into the conflict. And that is the danger. This is what is called the third party, which Mr. Putin and Mr. Lavrov talk about constantly. Well, Israel will have issues of surviving if they really go for Iran. And fact is, because we might expect, if United States decides to commit, so to speak, final act of its geopolitical suicide, it will go for Iran and it will get defeated there. So, and what can I say? We're looking at a very dangerous situation. But in this particular case, neither Russia nor China have any real levers, except for what Russia was doing with Syria and trying to control Arab animosity towards Israel for the last 8 years, since since Russia moved into Syria. So, but Arab Street, it's difficult to say. Egypt, for example, it is well known. Egypt is ready to fight Israel to the last Palestinian. So this is also, we shouldn't basically take account that there is some willingness of Arab Street to fight for Palestinians too. So it's complex and very complicated, actually. So who knows? I mean, this is just the framework I described to you. What's going to come out of it? Well, obviously, Russia and China will be working tirelessly trying to contain it. But overall, I mean, it's Israel and United States which are directly involved into that. And whoever controls Hamas, people said it's Mossad, possible.
Do you think that this conflict right now in Israel gonna put a force on the Biden administration to go after negotiations with Russians?
I'm pretty sure that Biden administration already is exploring this issue of negotiations. But the point is, you negotiate when you are in equal or about equal positions. There is nothing to negotiate for Russia. The only way it's happening right now, it's going to be either my way or the highway. And the Russians already actually indicated this. Putin and other top brass, so to speak, of Russian political top, Mr. Patrushev, Mr. Medvedev, Mr. Lavrov, they speak on it constantly. There's nobody to negotiate with anything, be that Kiev regime or Washington, D.C. And those people who live with this delusion that you can negotiate anything, they already missed the point completely. There will be only unconditional surrender, or rather conditional surrender. And conditions will be dictated by Russia. And they are well-known conditions. They have been very well formulated in the December 21, 2021 statement of Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs, which, of course, the statement of Russian policy towards the issue of the security in Europe. So now Mr. Medvedev, the second man in the Security Council of Russia and former president, no less, and maybe a future president too, he is on the record. The main task now is the annihilation of the Kiev regime, period. So you do not negotiate with Zelensky. It's over. That's what the people in Washington, D.C., or as the defense minister of Italy, who they live in the virtual world. They do not understand the balance of power. And I mean, they begin to get it. So in this particular case, Russia will continue with the special military operation until full mobilizational potential of Ukraine is completely annihilated. And sadly, we have to talk not only about the industry, military industry, which is pretty much done by now, but we talk about the personnel and mobilizational potential in terms of humans, so to speak. And that's the reality the United States will have to live with after it's all over. So there you go.
At the end of the day, there will be no negotiation with the Zelensky administration. It would be with someone else. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, oh, absolutely. The only reason you can negotiate with somebody is with the owners of Ukraine. The owners of Ukraine sit in Washington, D.C. And even with them, you not so much negotiate right now. We passed this thing. We passed this point. First, who we are going to negotiate in Biden administration? With Biden, the guy lives in the, I mean, his place is the nursing home. What is happening with Biden? It's abuse of the senior citizen who most of the time doesn't know where he is. Who you talk to? If you talk about those people with Obama's and others who run the Biden administration behind the scenes, how are you going to negotiate with Obama's? Obama is an amateur in the foreign policy. He always was. He was always pretty much amateur in anything. The only thing he knew, he was a race baiting, and that's about it. So, and when you look at this, so you do not negotiate with them. You basically state to them the conditions which they have to accept. If they do not accept, well, the SMO continues until it is over. What will be the end of SMO? How it is defined? Well, that's the beauty of this whole situation. While Russians obviously stated in December of 2021 what they would like to see and what they demand to see in terms on operational level, for example, in terms of the ground operations, and we're talking about massive scale operations. Where will Russia stop? Russians now do not negotiate or discuss it with anybody from NATO, United States, Great Britain, or whatever. So forget about those. Those are not players, really. Russians have the strategic discussion in Kremlin right now. And this is strategic discussion about where do we stop. That's the only discussion they have now. They don't care about what United States says. It's over for the Western world. What they have is how much we have to take on our balance of our country. Because we know that, for example, the figure has been already articulated by none other than Putin at Valdai conference. population of Ukraine right now is 19.5 million. It is more than 2 times smaller than when Ukraine started its existence at the separate state, independent state. So how many of those people, most of who, not all, but most of who hate Russian guts, how many of them you take on your so to speak balance, because you need to not only care of them, which Russia does really well with Russian resources, in terms of, you can look up Mariupol, how it is beautifully restored and things of this nature, but how many of them you have to literally re-educate, because many of them are sincere bearers of the Nazi Bandera ideology. That's the issue. So we know the only thing which I think so, Odessa will be taken. After that, probably some ramp state which left in Kiev and around Kiev, and Western Ukraine. That's it. So, but this is all speculation, and this is the key discussion in Kremlin right now. So there you go.
Has Russia ever been interested in the western part of Ukraine?
I assume that nobody wants Western Ukraine. Nobody. These are people who have this embedded, deeply run Bandera ideology. And unless you do there something on the level of their purchase, why do you need that? Then is another thing, of course, that if this is allowed to exist as the part of something larger, well, if Poland wants it, well, Poland will, by taking the Western Ukraine into its fold, it's already affecting Poles in the most profound and most unpleasant way. So that's going to be the end of the Poland as we know it. And so it's a complex issue. You cannot go like Israelis and put them, into some kind of the ghetto, like, for example, Gaza, and expect them to be normal people. They're not gonna, so to speak, change their ways for generations. It is actually embedded in their position there. It was grown up there and gestated for more than century. So I don't know, but no, I don't think so. Russia wants to deal with Western Ukraine at all. And what is important for Russia, probably to move this Western Ukraine part and throw it over the fence, if you wish, like you have the dead cat, and you throw over the fence to the neighbor, let them deal with that, so, and evidently Poland has issues now with that too.
It seems that Russia is already on offensive, isn't it?
Oh yeah, Russia was on offensive for a while. It was just a matter of, again, Russians do not rush to do anything. It's a classic economy of force posture. Why would you actually sacrifice more soldiers than you need to? And don't forget also, Israel actually, on the request of the United States, shipped pretty much huge stocks of the 155 millimeter ammunition to Ukraine, which was like Kremlin was scratching its head and like, wow, so these are our friends now, because Russia-Israeli relations were always kind of moderately good, so there was a good dynamics, good flavor about them. Not anymore. Israel just shown that, is no friend of Russia. So in this particular case, I don't know. They can send whatever they can, it doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything in terms of the, obviously, outcome, which already decided in Ukraine. But in terms of Israel's stock of ammunition, 155 millimeters, again, let's keep in mind the scale. The Gaza Strip is merely 150 square miles piece of land. So how much of artillery you need there? Not very much, honestly, So, and Israel has all means to kind of do the nasty thing there. So I wouldn't say that this is that important. Some of it will go, of course, towards Israel, no doubt about. But we're looking, again, people have to keep in mind scale. Almost 700 miles long front line and hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of troops on both sides. And here we have primarily 2 million of the civilians, basically concentrated in a very small piece of land. These are incomparable in terms of scale. Although, again, we're probably already seeing the unbelievable scale of the war crimes committed by Israel, in terms of blowing up. Well, again, very much of it will be indiscriminate, and many, obviously, Palestinian civilians will die as the result of that.
It seems that Europe is not that united that we thought there would be.
Yeah, first, let me put it this way. United Kingdom and France as the states, as we used to know them, are done. They will not exist as coherent nations probably by 2015. So in this case, it doesn't really matter. The only thing the French who can they elect? I mean, they elect Macron one after another time. So, and they every time I hear this, complaints that, oh, don't judge us like that because we do not elect, we elect only those who are imposed on us. Well, I'm sorry, guys, you still elect them. You have the power of voice. So you elected Macron, live with him. You have this clown circus in London, live with that. So your parties, you don't have even conservative parties anymore. So Germany is iffy, but primarily Western Europe is done as the Western civilization as it used to be. So I do not even pay that much attention to them. So maybe you will have another kind of knee-jerk reaction by Italians, but then again, they elected fraud. Anybody who had a brain, or half a brain, could see that Meloni was a globalist fraud. They elected her. So, hey, go right ahead. They don't have people and real statesmen anymore. Eastern Europe is somewhat different. And when you look at Viktor Orban, or you have the situation with Slovakia, and we probably will have some kind of the political maneuvering in Poland, those people do want to preserve their culture. They do not want war. They want to preserve their culture, normal human values, like obviously their family values. They do not want this wokeness. They do not want this insanity, gender affirmative insanity, and things of this nature. So they will remain somewhat not independent. They are still parts of EU and NATO. But as you saw yourself on the example of Mr. Orban, who is a shining example of actual conservative government and conservative party, Fidesz, which wins one election after another, you can stave off, you can defend against this uber liberal globalist agenda. You can defend your party. And obviously, in this particular case, how can you depend it? You have to rely on Russia in this particular case because Russia provides the energy for literally physical energy for the economies to operate there, to be, viable. And Slovakia is just one of the latest examples. And I think so. We will have a difference between what is called the old Europe, which is done. I don't think so. They have the way to save themselves. For example, you saw yourself, there was already one of the, I believe, in Bavaria, AFD, which is the alternative for Germany, high-level person have been actually assaulted with the syringe with some kind of. It's already started. They will not allow this party to appear in, to be able to form the government in Germany. I don't think so. And Germans will vote anyway for it. Doesn't matter what polls show. Polls show one thing, then the election day comes. And even if you consider that they probably do some, so to speak, irregularities in terms of the election process, they still vote in the end for what they always voted for. So it's kind of, you cannot feel stupid anymore, so that's what it is. Yeah, there are some layers of societies like in France or even in UK or in Germany who understand that, but I don't think so they are majority.
The only country that still is totally behind continuation of this war in Ukraine is the UK. They're trying to do everything to continue this war. Where does this animosity come from?
Well, because they are losers. It used to be great empire, and let's be frank, and they diminished themselves very much. And since the 1950, it was one just steady way down for the United Kingdom. And now what you see, you have this island, or rather group of islands, whose territory is smaller probably than one of the regions of Russia. Their army is a joke. They don't have real military capacity. Their navy is also this. They lost their commercial airspace industry. They lost its combat airspace industry. They lost pretty much everything, except for you here and there. You have the glimpses of the former Great Britain's glory, like Rolls-Royce, some other things, and maybe English Premier League. That's about it. I mean, London is dirty. If you take, get out of the touristy places, it is dirty. It is absolutely not English anymore. And I mean, come on, let's face it, it's primarily becoming Pakistani city and other, Asian and Arab and what have you, minorities, which are probably going to be the majority, if not already. So, and when you look at that, it's a country in a complete decline. I mean, and so you have now these pompous guys who still remember when the Oxford, education was valuable and things like that. I mean, you saw yourself what Oxford produces. When you have the prime minister who has degree in literature, forgive me, and I'm talking about Boris Johnson, or you have Liz Truss who doesn't know even basic facts of geography, or you have the Rishi Sunak, or you have this. I mean, it's pathetic. I'm sorry. And the more they feel that they are pathetic, which they are, the more they feel how incredibly small and insignificant they are. And without United States, they are nobody. They are not even prime time, European power. That's where the hatred comes, because obviously they see Russia. And again, take any Londoner who haven't been to Russia and read all this propaganda and bring them to Russia in Moscow, St. Petersburg, Sochi, Yekaterinburg, Novosibirsk, or Vladivostok. They will have their actually cognitive dissonance and cultural shock, because England looks like, they still have some, remaining mythology of the powerful finances of London, just to demonstrate to you. When they basically impose this price cap for Russian oil, one of the major attachment to it was that nothing, no ship, no tanker can be now insured by, which was primarily the Lloyd Insurance and those insurance conglomerates in London. Well, guess what? They forgot that Russia is much more, much richer than they are, and Russians bought this so-called shadow tanker fleet. And what Russians did, they opened their own maritime insurance corporation, which insures those fleets with the agreement with whatever the destination is, be that India, be that China, what have you. And it works just fine without London. And that's the shock for them.
I think one of the key statements of Putin at the Valdai discussion club was this. Mm-hmm. He said that the era of colonialism is over. And he said that we are defending our borders, our culture, and our people. This is a key statement to understand his mindset. What's your take on this?
It's been basically a long evolution of Vladimir Putin in sense of the political, economical outlook. But in terms of ideology, Vladimir Putin always was and remains today more than ever what is called moderate Russian nationalist. And there's nothing wrong with being moderate nationalist. You don't want to go to the extremes, but your a real well, he uses the word patriotism, because there is this good distinction of the nationalist hates everything outside his nation, while patriot loves his nation and does not reject what is outside. So it's kind of play of the terms and definitions, but he is the moderate Russian nationalist, and you cannot take this away, because and that's what his appeal is to the overwhelming majority of Russians, and this is very clear.
Before this war started, we know that they were talking about we cannot talk, we cannot negotiate with Putin. What they were looking for in Russia, Medvedev?
Fifth column, that's the only thing they looking for. They always looked for people who are not even dissidents. I mean, dissidents also vary. No, they were looking for the Navalny type characters, okay, which are fully paid for and bought by the CIA and all those, NGOs. They look for people of this nature who would basically just remove the national considerations from the Russian policies, basically bring Russia back to the catastrophe of 1990s, and will allow the basically rape and pillage of the Russian nation by the international corporations, so primarily transnational corporations. That's the only thing they want to see. They don't care about Russia. First, West doesn't know Russia. That's the issue, That's the other thing, because basically, as I already stated, I'm on the record, most of what goes in terms of the country studies, foreign policy, educational establishment, be that Ivy League like Harvard, Yale, or Princeton, or Oxford, and it's all garbage. They don't teach anything there. Most of people who teach this, professors in the United States or in Great Britain or elsewhere, they are totally actually, how to put it away, not only illiterate, they unqualified, but they are brainwashed themselves, and this was happening since the times of the Soviet Union. And that is why they today, when you look at this, you have illiterate people, literally, who do not understand what Russia is. And in this particular case, I mean, what can I say? I mean, we are looking at the catastrophic degradation of the Western elites. That is why they always kind of project their psychopathic impulses, onto Russia, thinking that they understand, because you have this whole cabal of so-called Russia specialists, former Russians, most of them from the liberal wing, who have almost zero support in Russia, but they are the ones who shape those perceptions by those not very cultured people. Make no mistake. Look at the Western elites. Look at Anthony Blinken. Look at Boris Johnson. Look at Rishi Sunak. Look at Victoria Nuland. Look at anybody else. They are not very cultured people. They are badly read. They might know a couple more in foreign languages, but they lack fundamental culture, which expresses itself as class and understanding of the opposite. They have no toolkit for that. American diplomacy it's a circus, it's a joke. It's like there are no diplomats in the United States, let's put it this way. So when you look at them, they are, oh my God, those people, it's just ridiculous. You cannot talk to them. You cannot reason with them because they are so uncultured. And the same goes for United Kingdom or whatever, And that's why, who do you talk to? Yeah, just show me the real statesman, real political figure you can talk to, who has the influence, power, and everything. What? You're going to talk to AIPAC? Russia's not going to talk to AIPAC. But this is what is being run, those people who run essentially the America's foreign policy.